Leora moved quietly through the forest, her eyes scanning every shadow and movement around her. The trees were tall and thick, their leaves whispering softly in the wind. She had felt a strange tension in the air ever since dawn, a warning that danger was near. Saren, her young daughter, followed closely behind her, holding a small pack of supplies and looking up at her mother with wide, trusting eyes. Leora's heart tightened as she thought of the fragile life in her care. Every step was careful, yet her instincts told her that caution alone would not keep them safe. The forest had always been a sanctuary for their kind, a place where elves and their dragons could live away from the chaos of human wars and alien conflicts. But today the sense of calm was broken. There was a faint hum in the air, an unnatural vibration that made her skin crawl. Leora paused, ears straining to catch any sound. A sudden rustle came from the undergrowth ahead. She signaled Saren to stay low, and the young elf crouched behind a fallen tree trunk, eyes wide and breath shallow. The rustling grew louder, and from the shadows emerged three figures, their armor shining with a metallic sheen, weapons glinting in the pale sunlight. Leora recognized them as raiders from a distant sector, known for attacking travelers and harvesting young elves for unknown purposes. Without hesitation, Leora stepped forward to confront them. Her heart pounded with a mix of fear and fury. The raiders laughed, a harsh, grating sound that made her blood boil. They underestimated her, assuming that she would yield to their threats. But Leora had been trained in the ways of the blade since she was old enough to walk. Her movements were fluid, precise, and deadly. She drew her sword, the metal humming softly as it connected with the energy field surrounding her hand. The raiders hesitated for a moment, surprised by her sudden aggression, but their hesitation was brief. They lunged forward together, weapons raised. Intent on taking Saren, Leora parried their first strike, feeling the force jolt up her arms, her muscles straining against the impact. She blocked and struck back, moving with a grace that belied the tension in her body. The forest seemed to hold its breath as she fought, every leaf and branch a silent witness to her skill. But then a sudden movement caught her eye. A shadow moved faster than anything she had seen, and a human stepped between her daughter and the raiders. He was unarmed, wearing simple clothing that offered no protection. Yet he stood firm, his posture calm and unwavering. His eyes met hers and she saw no fear, only a quiet determination. The raiders sneered at the human, assuming he would fall with the first blow. One of them swung a plasma blade toward Saren, and Leora braced herself, ready to strike. But the human moved with impossible speed. He caught the blade with his forearm, the metal sizzling as it struck him, and did not falter. Another raider aimed a punch at Saren's head, and the human turned his body, taking the hit squarely on his shoulder, staggering but remaining upright. Each strike he endured seemed to fuel his resolve rather than weaken him. Leora watched in disbelief, the fear in her chest mixing with awe. This human was doing what no ordinary being could do. He was shielding her daughter with his own body, taking blow after blow without showing any sign of giving up. Saren watched silently, too shocked to speak. Her small hands were clenched into fists, and her eyes followed the human's every move. There was a strange energy about him, a calm that contrasted sharply with the chaos around them. Leora realized that she had never seen anything like it. She had trained countless warriors, fought alongside dragons, faced dangers beyond imagination, yet this human brought a new dimension to courage and strength. The raiders began to falter, their confidence shaken by his resilience. They were not expecting such resistance, and confusion spread across their faces. Leora took advantage of their hesitation. She moved swiftly, striking the nearest raider with a precise blow that sent him sprawling into the undergrowth. Another raider swung his weapon at her, but she ducked and rolled, coming up behind him and disarming him with a twist of her wrist. The third raider hesitated, looking between Leora and the human who still stood, battered but unbroken. Finally, with a roar of frustration, the raiders retreated into the forest, disappearing as quickly as they had appeared. Silence returned, broken only by the heavy breathing of Leora and the human who had saved her daughter. Leora approached cautiously, still unsure of the human's intentions. He looked up at her, eyes clear and steady, a small cut on his cheek the only sign of the battle. Saren ran to him, throwing her arms around his legs in gratitude. Leora felt a mixture of relief and unease. This human had risked everything for her child. She had to know who he was and why he had acted with such bravery. The human stood and nodded at Leora, as if acknowledging her silent questions. He spoke in a calm, low voice, assuring them that they were safe. Leora noticed that he did not boast or seek recognition. He did not ask for reward or favor. His actions were driven by something deeper, something she could not yet understand. She helped Saren gather her things and led them both to a safe clearing where they could rest and assess the situation. Her dragon companion Aris appeared from the treetops, landing gracefully beside her. The dragon sniffed the air, its golden eyes narrowing as it regarded the human. There was a tense moment, the kind that passed between predator and newcomer, but the human met the dragon's gaze without fear. Aris lowered its head slightly, a silent gesture of cautious acceptance. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, Leora tended to Saren and the human's wounds. She could not shake the feeling that this encounter was only the beginning. There was a story in the human's eyes, a past filled with experiences that had shaped his strength and resilience. Leora realized that she would need to learn more about him, to understand the mystery he carried within. That night, as the forest settled into quiet darkness, Leora kept watch. Saren slept peacefully, unaware of the danger they had narrowly escaped. Aris curled around the clearing, its scales glinting in the moonlight. The human sat by the fire, tending to his injuries with a steady hand. Leora watched him silently, a mixture of curiosity and cautious respect growing within her. She knew that the world beyond their sanctuary was dangerous and that having such a human by her side could change everything. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the promise of more challenges to come. Leora understood that the path ahead would be uncertain, filled with battles and choices that could shape the fate of their lives. Yet, for the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of hope. There was something extraordinary about the human who had stepped between life and death to protect her daughter. Leora could not yet name the feeling, but she knew that it would alter the course of their lives forever. The forest slept, but in the hearts of Leora, Saren, and the human named Mason, a new story had begun, one that would test courage, loyalty, and the power of an unbreakable bond. The morning light filtered through the dense canopy as Leora guided Mason and Saren deeper into the hidden parts of the forest. Every step was deliberate, the ground soft with moss and fallen leaves. Leora moved with quiet grace, her senses alert to any danger that might emerge from the shadows. Mason walked beside her, his movements steady despite the injuries from the previous day. Saren skipped along, her curiosity pulling her forward even as she clutched her mother's hand. They reached a secluded glade where a small stream ran, its water clear and cold. Leora set down the packs and motioned for Mason to sit. She could see the bruises and cuts on his arms and shoulders and knew he needed rest. Mason looked around, taking in the surroundings with a calm expression. There was no fear in his eyes, only a quiet awareness of everything around him. Leora observed him closely, trying to read the human's intentions. She had seen many who claimed to protect, yet few could endure the trials that Mason had faced without faltering. Aris descended from the treetops, landing gracefully beside the human. The dragon's golden eyes studied him intently, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air around him. Mason did not flinch. He met Aris's gaze with respect, and the dragon gave a low rumble that Leora recognized as a sign of tentative approval. The bond between an elf and her dragon was sacred, yet Mason had passed the first test without even speaking. Leora felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps he was more than a simple wanderer. They rested. Leora began to speak of the dangers that lurked beyond the forest. She explained the rival elven factions, the human mercenaries, and the alien raiders who sought to exploit their kind. Mason listened intently, nodding occasionally, absorbing every detail. There was no panic in him, only a steady determination. Leora found herself impressed by his focus and the way he seemed to understand the gravity of their situation without being overwhelmed. Saren, curious as ever, approached Mason with a question about the previous day's battle. Mason smiled gently at her, recounting the events with a simplicity that did not diminish the danger they had faced. He spoke without arrogance, his words calm and reassuring. Saren listened with wide eyes, imagining the blows he had taken and the courage he had shown. Leora watched them both, a strange mixture of relief and awe filling her chest. Mason's presence was already changing their world, and she could not deny the sense of safety he brought. Leora decided that they could not stay in the glade indefinitely. The forest was a sanctuary, but it was not immune to discovery. She led them further into the hidden paths, where the trees grew closer together and the light dimmed. The air grew cooler, and the sounds of wildlife were muffled by the thick foliage. Here, she told Mason, they would find a place to rest and recover properly. It was an ancient part of the forest, known only to her and a few trusted elves. There, they could plan their next moves and learn more about the human who had saved Serin Dawn as they traveled. Mason moved carefully, his eyes scanning the surroundings. He asked no questions about the forest, yet he seemed to understand the need for caution. Leora noted his adaptability. Humans, in her experience, were often rigid in their thinking, but Mason's calm and deliberate actions suggested a mind trained for survival. She began to see that his strength was not only physical but mental. He could endure and adapt in ways that even seasoned elves might struggle with. They reached a hidden valley, surrounded by towering cliffs and thick vegetation. A small waterfall fed a clear pond in the center, and ancient ruins provided shelter from the elements. Leora led Mason and Saren to the ruins, explaining that they would be safe here for now. A reef circled above, landing with a gentle thud beside the pond. Mason knelt to drink from the water, then carefully washed the blood and grime from his wounds. Leora could see the cuts and bruises fading, though some deep marks remained. Mason's endurance amazed her. Even the simplest tasks, which would exhaust others, seemed effortless for him. That evening, as the sun dipped below the cliffs, Leora prepared a simple meal. Mason sat across from her, eating quietly while Saren chattered about the dragon in the forest. There was a peaceful rhythm to their actions, a temporary respite from the dangers that awaited them. Leora found herself watching Mason, noting the way he moved, the way he handled the simplest tasks with care and precision. She realized that his strength went beyond fighting ability. He was patient, observant, and unwavering. It was a rare combination, one that could tip the scales in the battles to come. Night fell, and the valley grew quiet. Aris lay beside the ruins, wings folded, eyes half-closed but alert. Leora kept watch for a while, reflecting on the events that had brought them here. Mason had stepped into their lives without warning, yet his actions had saved Saren and changed the balance of power around them. She could not predict what lay ahead, but she knew that having him by her side would alter their fates. As she finally allowed herself to rest, Leora felt a strange sense of anticipation. The human had shown courage beyond measure, resilience beyond comprehension, and a loyalty that could not be broken by fear or pain. She realized that the days ahead would test them all, but she also felt hope. Mason was not just a protector. He was a force that could help them survive the coming trials. And as she drifted into sleep, she knew that their bond, forged in the heat of battle and the quiet of the forest, would only grow stronger with each challenge they faced together. The days passed quietly in the hidden valley, but the peace was fragile. Leora trained with Saren in the mornings, showing her daughter the basics of swordplay and stealth. Mason observed, helping when necessary, his hands steady as he guided Saren through each movement. Aris flew above them, occasionally landing to offer tips of its own. The dragon's presence was both protective and instructive. A silent mentor for both human and elf, Leora could see the subtle ways Mason adapted. He was careful, yet bold when the moment required it. Unlike most humans she had encountered, he did not panic or rush. His reactions were measured, precise, and sometimes startlingly fast. She began to understand that his skill was not merely physical. Mason seemed to anticipate danger in ways that suggested deep instinct or experience beyond what she could comprehend. Each day she noticed how he quietly assessed the terrain, predicted Saren's movements, and even read the dragon's subtle signals with uncanny accuracy. One afternoon, while they practiced near the stream, a distant tremor shook the valley. The water rippled violently and Aris lifted off with a roar. Mason's eyes narrowed, and he positioned himself between Saren and the source of the disturbance. Leora felt a surge of relief mixed with unease. This human, so calm in their sanctuary, instinctively took charge in the face of danger. It was unsettling and reassuring all at once. The tremor was followed by the sound of distant roars and crashing, the unmistakable echo of an approaching threat. Leora's mind raced as she gathered her weapons and signaled to Mason. The humans and alien raiders who hunted elves had discovered them sooner than expected. Mason did not hesitate, moving with a quiet authority that surprised Leora. He coordinated with her, guiding Saren to safety and preparing defensive positions around the valley. When the first enemy scouts arrived, they were met with unexpected resistance. Leora fought with precision, but Mason moved with a force that seemed to multiply with each strike. He used the terrain to his advantage, setting traps, leading attackers into ambush, and standing firm against blows that would have shattered any ordinary human. Aris joined the battle, swooping down with fire and claws, yet always careful to avoid harming Saren. Mason anticipated each move, his strategy as fluid as it was deadly. By midday, the valley was under siege. Larger forces approached, experimental weapons designed to suppress both elves and dragons. Leora and Mason worked in perfect synchronization, each anticipating the other's movements. Mason's human strength and resilience were extraordinary. He carried heavy armor without faltering and wielded weapons with skill that rivaled even the trained elves. Each attack he faced, each blow he endured, seemed only to sharpen his focus. Leora felt both admiration and unease. There was a power in him that defied her understanding. Aris roared and soared above, striking fear into the attackers, yet Mason remained grounded. He moved through the chaos with steady calm, guiding Saren and coordinating defensive maneuvers. Leora realized that she had underestimated the potential of this human. His bravery and intelligence were matched by endurance beyond comprehension. The enemy forces, confident at first, began to falter under the combined resistance of Leora, Mason, and the dragon god as the battle intensified. A massive war beast appeared on the horizon. It was unlike anything they had faced, its body armored and powerful, weapons mounted along its sides. Leora prepared to defend Saren, knowing that the creature's strength could easily overwhelm them. Mason did not hesitate. With a silent determination, he moved toward the beast, his strategy clear even without words. Leora followed, ready to support him, while Aris circled. Keeping the enemy's focus divided, Mason faced the war beast with calm precision. He dodged its attacks, using the terrain and his instincts to gain advantage. Each strike he endured only fueled his resolve. Leora watched in awe as he combined strength, intelligence, and timing in ways that seemed almost supernatural. The beast's attacks were powerful, yet Mason's resilience never wavered. Saren, watching from a safe distance, cheered quietly. Inspired by his courage, hours passed, yet Mason continued to hold his ground. Leora realized that he was more than a protector. He was a force that could change the tide of battle. Every move he made was deliberate, calculated to maximize impact and minimize risk. Aris joined in with precision strikes, complementing Mason's tactics. The war beast faltered under their combined effort, its momentum broken by skill and determination rather than sheer force alone. When the creature finally fell, the valley lay scarred but secure. The enemy forces, shaken by the human's resilience and the dragon's power, retreated. Leora and Mason helped each other tend to wounds, their movements familiar now, almost instinctive. Saren hugged them both, tears of relief in her eyes. The bond between them had grown stronger in the crucible of battle, a connection forged through courage, endurance, and trust. That evening, as the sun set over the valley, Leora sat beside Mason, observing the human who had changed everything. He cleaned his weapons quietly, his eyes reflecting the orange glow of the sky. She could see the marks of the battle on his body, yet he moved with grace and purpose. Aris settled beside them, its scales glinting in the fading light. Leora realized that Mason's presence was no longer just a matter of survival. He had become part of their lives, a guardian, a teacher, and a force that could protect them from threats beyond imagination. The days ahead would be filled with challenges, yet she felt a strange sense of hope. This human, who had endured every blow and stood firm, would be their shield and their strength. And as the night deepened, Leora knew that the story of Mason Saren and the dragon Orcs was only beginning, a tale of courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable bonds forged in the fires of war. The valley was quiet at dawn, but Leora knew that calm could not last long. The battle had been won, but the enemy would regroup and return. She and Mason had spent the night discussing strategies, their voices low as Saren slept nearby. The young elf had grown attached to Mason, calling him her protector, and sometimes asking him to tell stories of his world. Leora noticed the way Mason responded to her daughter, patient and gentle, never raising his voice. This human, who had endured so much, carried himself with a quiet authority that inspired trust and respect. As the morning light touched the valley, a distant sound reached their ears, a rumble unlike any storm or creature of the forest. Mason tensed, moving instinctively toward the source. Leora followed, her sword ready, a wreath circling above, wings catching the sunlight. The sound grew louder, and soon a massive war machine appeared on the horizon. Its size dwarfed anything they had seen, and it moved with a deliberate power that shook the ground with every step. Leora felt her heart tighten. This was no ordinary foe. Mason, however, remained calm, scanning the terrain and considering the possibilities. Without hesitation, Mason led them to a position near the cliff edge, using the height to observe the enemy. He directed Leora to move Saren to a safer location, behind natural cover, while he and Orcs prepared to confront the threat. Leora was in awe of Mason's composure. The human seemed to calculate each move with precision, anticipating the war machine's approach and planning their defense accordingly. When the war machine entered the valley, it unleashed a series of attacks, lasers and mechanical limbs striking the ground and trees. Leora and Mason moved together seamlessly, each action coordinated with instinctive understanding. Orcs swooped down, claws and fire meeting the mechanical beast with precision. Mason, using his own strength, leapt and dodged with agility, striking at vulnerable points exposed by Orcs. Leora watched as the human endured hits that would have shattered any ordinary being. Each time rising and countering with unyielding determination, the battle raged for hours. The war machine was relentless, yet Mason adapted, reading its movements and predicting its next strike. Leora fought alongside him, their movements synchronized, a combination of elven skill and human endurance. Orcs darted and struck, distracting the machine and allowing Mason to exploit openings. Saren watched from a safe distance, her admiration for Mason growing with every maneuver. At a critical moment, the war machine unleashed a massive energy blast aimed directly at their position. Leora froze, realizing that even Mason might not withstand it. But Mason, without hesitation, jumped into the path of the blast. Using his body to shield Saren, the energy struck him squarely, throwing him to the ground. Leora ran to him, fearing the worst, but Mason pushed himself up, bloodied and bruised, yet standing with unwavering determination. The enemy machine faltered under the combined assault. Mason, with his strategic insight and relentless strength, exploited a weakness in its structure. Orcs struck with fire and claws, while Leora delivered precise attacks, finally bringing the war machine down. The valley fell silent, the ground scarred but secure. Mason, exhausted and wounded, stood amidst the wreckage, his chest heaving, yet his eyes clear and focused. Leora approached him, a mix of relief and awe in her gaze. She had seen humans fight, but never like this. Mason's courage and resilience had saved them all. Saren ran to him, wrapping her small arms around his legs, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. Orcs lowered its head in a gesture of respect, acknowledging the human who had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. As the sun set over the valley, Leora and Mason tended to their wounds, the quiet hum of the forest returning. Leora could not shake the feeling that this human was extraordinary in ways that went beyond physical strength. His mind, his instincts, and his loyalty were as remarkable as his endurance. She realized that having him by her side could change everything for her and her daughter. Night fell, and the valley grew calm. Mason sat near the fire, cleaning his weapons, while Leora watched him, contemplating the battles ahead. Aris curled beside them, alert yet peaceful. Saren slept soundly, knowing she was safe. Leora understood that their bond had deepened. Mason was no longer just a protector. He was a vital part of their lives, a force that could face dangers beyond imagination. As the stars appeared in the sky, Leora felt a strange mix of admiration and curiosity. Mason's presence had altered the rhythm of their lives, bringing hope where there had been only caution and fear. She knew that the challenges ahead would be great, but with him they stood a chance. The human who had endured every blow and stood firm now held a place in their hearts and in the defense of their world. And as she settled beside him, Leora realized that the story of Mason, Saren, and Aris was far from over. The days ahead would test courage, loyalty, and the strength of bonds forged in the fires of conflict. But together they were ready to face whatever came next. The morning after the battle, the valley seemed almost peaceful. Sunlight streamed through the trees, reflecting off the clear water of the pond. Leora walked slowly with Saren, keeping her close. Mason followed behind, his movements quiet but steady, still weary from the long fight. The air was calm, but Leora knew that peace was fragile. There were forces beyond the forest that would challenge them again, yet she felt a strange sense of security with Mason beside them. Saren skipped ahead, inspecting the plants and flowers along the path. Mason watched her with a small smile, kneeling to examine a strange bloom. Leora noticed how gentle he was with her daughter, patient and careful, never rushing or showing frustration. There was a quiet strength in him, the kind that did not need words to show power. Leora felt a mix of admiration and something deeper stirring within her. The human who had faced every danger with unbroken resolve had earned a place in her life beyond necessity. As they reached a clearing, Aris landed beside them, its golden eyes observing Mason closely. The dragon had fought many battles and seen countless warriors, yet it seemed to acknowledge something special in this human. Mason met Aris's gaze with steady calm, and for a moment the three of them simply watched each other. Leora felt a shift in the energy around them, a bond forming that went beyond simple protection or survival. It was trust and respect, a connection born in the fire of conflict. They spent the day repairing their shelters and tending to the valley. Leora taught Saren small survival skills while Mason helped with heavier tasks. He moved with ease, lifting and carrying without strain, his strength apparent yet controlled. Leora observed how naturally he adapted to the environment, learning quickly and anticipating needs without being asked. It was clear that Mason was not just physically strong but highly perceptive and intelligent. His presence brought efficiency and calm to their daily routine. As evening approached, Leora and Mason sat near the pond. The water reflected the colors of the sky, and Aris rested nearby, wings folded, watching over them. Leora finally spoke, breaking the silence. She acknowledged Mason's courage, his unwavering loyalty, and the way he had risked everything to protect Saren. Mason responded simply, his words humble but sincere. He did not boast or claim credit, only stating that he would always do what he could to keep them safe. Leora felt a deep respect for him and realized that her feelings had grown beyond gratitude. There was a connection forming, one that could not be ignored. Saren approached them, bringing small gifts from the forest, flowers and colorful stones. She placed them in front of Mason, who smiled warmly and thanked her. Leora watched the interaction, noting how natural it felt. Mason was not just a protector. He was becoming a part of their family, a figure that Saren trusted completely. Leora felt her heart lighten. The battles and dangers had brought them together, but it was the quiet moments like this that revealed the true strength of their bond. Night fell, and the valley was bathed in silver light from the moon. Leora and Mason sat together, speaking quietly of the future. The challenges they had faced were only the beginning, yet there was hope in knowing they would face them together. Aris remained alert but calm, sensing the security in their companionship. Leora realized that Mason's presence had changed her life in ways she had not expected. He had shown courage, endurance, and unwavering loyalty. Now he had inspired trust, companionship, and a deeper bond that went beyond mere survival. Days turned into weeks, and the valley slowly healed from the battles. Mason continued to demonstrate his strength and wisdom, guiding Saren in training and helping Leora strengthen their defenses. The trio became a team, each member playing a vital role. Leora noticed the way Mason observed details others might miss, the way he anticipated danger, and the way he remained calm under pressure. His human abilities, once underestimated, were extraordinary, a combination of mind and body that enhanced their chances of survival. One morning, Leora approached Mason while Saren and Aris were exploring a nearby ridge. She expressed her feelings, acknowledging not only his bravery and strength but the bond that had grown between them. Mason listened with quiet understanding, never rushing, never forcing his response. Leora felt relief and warmth, realizing that their connection was mutual. The human who had endured unimaginable trials and protected her daughter had become an essential part of her life. In the following days, Leora and Mason worked together to prepare for potential threats, knowing that their enemies would not rest. Yet, amidst the training and vigilance, they shared quiet moments of companionship. They walked through the forest, spoke of their pasts, and learned from one another. Mason shared stories of his world, simple tales of resilience and hope, while Leora taught him about the history and culture of elves. Saren listened eagerly, Aris observing with keen interest. The bond between the human, the elf mother, her daughter, and the dragon grew stronger, rooted in trust, respect, and mutual care. As the sun set on the valley one evening, Leora reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The battles had been fierce, the dangers relentless, yet they had survived through courage, strategy, and an unbreakable bond. Mason had taken every blow to protect Saren, and in doing so, he had earned not only their trust, but their hearts. Leora realized that the human who had arrived unannounced, a stranger in a foreign land, had become indispensable. He was not just a warrior. He was a protector, a teacher, and a companion. The days ahead would hold more challenges, but together they would face them, united by loyalty, courage, and the enduring strength of their bond. The valley, scarred but alive, was a testament to their resilience, and Mason's place by their side was a promise of hope, safety, and an unspoken love that had grown in the fires of trials and trust.